Okay, today we will be talking about the largest man-made forest. It's claimed to be largest, so I suppose it is. So let me just share the screen first. Okay, the Saihanba National Forest Park. So this man-made forest is now a tourist park. So a little bit of come on. So this will be the entrance. So Chinese parks usually will have an entrance where they will collect entrance fees. So, but if you are over 65, even if you are not a Chinese citizen, you still enjoy free entries to most of the tourist attraction in China. So it is located somewhere in the dot there. So you will see that it is in between a brown area and a green area. So that used to be a forest, but due to neglect, it was barren, and then it is now rebuilt. It is it is covering about 92,000 hectares. So it's the China's largest forest at the moment. It is in the northern boundary between the southern edge of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. So it's right at the boundary there. This is just a larger image. The site itself is 92,000 hectares, so it's not small. And this is map. I suppose if you want to stay there, you can probably stay there for a whole week, but not much to do anyway. Climate-wise, it is in the cold temperate monsoon climate zone with a average annual temperature of 1.3 degrees Celsius. So it's pretty cold. It snows about 7 months of each year, so there is plenty of water, and the earliest recorded snowfall is in August, and the latest is in June. So if that's the case, it's almost 10 months. So it is quite a bit of snow coming from the North Pole. It is on average pretty cold area. This is what it looks like today, and I'm going to show you a little video to show you how that is built. So
you just saw Saihanba, the world's largest man-made forest. Stretching over 747 square kilometers, it acts like an environmental shield, protecting northern China from sandstorms that plague the region. This is Xinhua Special, and I'm Helen Bentley. Just 400 kilometers north of Beijing, Saihanba is often called the Greenland of North China. Looking at it today, it's hard to comprehend that a little over 50 years ago, this landscape was dusty and barren. Saihanba was actually a royal hunting ground during the Qing dynasty, but deteriorated after one of the last emperors, struggling with estate debt, allowed the trees to be cut down and sold as lumber. When the idea to build a wall of trees in the area was first floated in the 1960s, scientists found just one lone tree. But this discovery was to plant the seeds of an idea that grew into this vast sprawling forest of 480 million trees. The first generation of tree planters arrived in 1962. Their descendants are due to finish the mammoth task next year. In the meantime, Leo Juan and his wife are among the fire marshals that have helped keep the forest fire-free for 55 years. But the biggest downside of living among such beauty is loneliness. Leo even taught himself to paint to cope with the isolation. Their work and the project as a whole has informed China's management of its 2 million square kilometres of forest. Deforestation is not an issue unique to China. 30% of the Earth's surface is forest. It's a global challenge that's included as an area of concern under the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Environmental work, which China refers to as ecological civilization, was actually listed as one of the country's 5 development goals in 2012, the year Xi Jinping was elected General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. She has said that pristine waters and lush greenery are as valuable as gold and silver. This is reflected in the country's 13th five-year plan, which includes commitments to push ahead with large-scale afforestation, restore forests, develop forest shelter belts, and protect natural forests. By the end of 2016, 21% of China was covered in forest, the 5th largest forested area in the world. And it aims to expand this coverage to more than 23% by 2020. Saihanba illustrates how much can be changed in just 50 years with willpower and persistence. Rapid economic development since the 1980s has left China with environmental scars that need time to be reversed. China has sworn to protect the environment with the commitment it deserves, as if it were a matter of life or death. Environmental protection is a monumental global task. Measures at the domestic level have international significance. And with Saihanba as an example, China is showing the world what rewards can be reaped by long-term vision and commitment. See you next time.
Okay, just treat that as a propaganda. Okay, and we shall examine a little bit into more details. It was a royal hunting ground since the Liu time, so it was back in about almost over 10,000. Over 1,000 years ago. So it has always been in the imperial household's hunting ground. In 1681, Kanxi Emperor set a moorland paddock in the area as their resting place when they go hunting, and that place still significant today. By in 1863, the last dynasty, the Qing dynasty government, allows farmers to reclaim the land, and then started allowing them to do cutting down the trees for timbers, etc. And eventually it becomes a barren desert. When that happens, when sandstorm blows, the sandstorm actually reaches Beijing and Tianjin and other northern cities. So in 1962, in order to put an end to the sandstorms, the State Forestry Administration set at the Saihanba mechanical forest farm there. So they are going to regenerate the trees. Then the first generation of tree planters came there. They tried to green the barren land and turn it into an oasis. So by May 1993, so that is over 30 years later, it is designated as a national forest park. And by 2000, it has been categorized as a 5A level tourist site. The Chinese food tourist attractions is numbered by number of A's, 5 A's being the highest attractions, like the, for example, the Great Wall, etc. These are of significance attraction to the tourists. And the destination depends on the amenities provided by the site. So the site need to meet a certain levels of attractions and build up in order to let the tourists enjoy the site in order to get the destination of 5A. So this is the highest level of destination in the Chinese system. In May 2007, the park is rated as the National Nature Reserve. So now it is a reserve, and nobody should be able to use it for a selfish reason. It has to be managed by the forest administration, the state forestry administration. And in December 5th, 2017, he won the honor of the Champions of the World in the category of inspiration and action due to his efforts to transform degraded land into a lush paradise, the highest environmental honor provided by the United Nations environmental program. So it is quite an achievement. The reason that this land becomes so barren is because of the extensive logging and wildfires. So it swept through the forest and the grassland, and eventually the beautiful Saihanba has vanished. As noted in the videos before, this is the only tree left in the whole area. So it was called the Tree of Honor because it's the only one left there, and you look at it, it is quite in distress actually. But the seeds from this tree actually was used to plant the forest. So this particular forest is a single species forest. It's mostly planted using the seeds of this tree. So in the beginning, the forestry sent in 120 graduates to join with the 242 locals to start rebuilding the forest. So this is the time when they are going into the region. You will notice that at that time there's already a bit of tree there. So over the next 50 years, they overcome countless difficulties and setbacks to plant trees. They're working in a very harsh environment. So you will see that there are trees planted last year, and the workers are digging into the slope and the sand to plant another row of trees. The living condition is very bad. This is one of those huts which the tree planters live. They lived on pickles, dried up bums, and melted snows. So life was very difficult. But now life is much better. The picture here is a modern picture, and the two older gentlemen there and his wife started working back in 1962, and they're now 81 now. And I think around them are their grandkids, the second generation. Their children probably is working somewhere in the forest at the moment. So they settle into the forest and then bring up their family. When the old man came, he also asked his relatives to follow him. So basically, the management is a large extended family. Here we is showing a forest ranger of the Daily Journal, what he was doing for that particular day, where what happened, etc. So they keep a pretty tight record. Next, come on, next screen. Here is the forest firefighters. In the previous 55 years, there was no fire because they know that if there's a fire, all the effort will be destroyed. So fighting fire is a pretty high priority. In order to do that, they have this watching tower, fire watchers tower. These two are the fire watchers. They live next to the tower. They work up there with all the equipments. They are watching over the forest and make sure that there's no smoke, meaning that there's no fire. If there's any fire, they will alert the firefighters. And there are several of these uh, fire watching towers around the forest. As noted, the life is very boring, so they learn to paint. This he is showing off some of his painting. Now the forest is pretty mature, so they also started to harvesting some of the timber, and this timber is sold in order to maintain the livelihood of the people working there. So in order to sustain this movement, they must continue to provide funding. So if the funding is only coming from the government, then eventually it will stop. In order to sustain the movement, there must be a method of generating profit. So it is the member of the management team checking on the stock of the wood. Obviously, when they harvest the wood, they are going to plant some of the trees back in order to make it a sustainable situation. Okay, today the revenue comes from two parts. One is obviously selling of timber. The second part is from the tourist entrance fees and all the money spent by the tourists. I'm now going to show you some of the pictures took by people in the forest, and some of them is actually part of a competition, and after the competition it becomes an exhibition. So this is a photo taken around 2017. I think this is autumn, so the landscape is mostly red trees with red leaves. And they also use animals as a method of managing the area, because in order to cut down on the amount of grass grow, they use sheep. So the sheep will go through the forest area by area. The sheep act like a mower, so they are mowing the grass. By keeping the herd size and they're keeping the herd together, not only they mow the grass, they also fertilize the land at the same time. So this is using organic method to manage the forest. Another view of the forest. Come on. The forest has now becomes a attraction for weddings. A lot of people like to go there to take their wedding photographs. With the flowers open, is actually pretty beauty. And of course, there's a lot of people going there to do photography as well. So let's look at the next picture. Come on. Beautiful, isn't it? And then we see there are some buildings. These are built for tourist attractions. The forest itself is almost, you can see, is almost the same kind of tree. So because at that time they were planting a single type of tree, and because as mentioned, it snows most of the time, so they are able to keep a little lake in the middle of the forest. A sunset.
Looks like we've lost Albert. Everyone else should try and mute their.
Yes, please mute your. Come on. And a misty morning. My computer is not moving up ahead as quickly as I wish. Come on. Next one. Come on. And horses as well, because it was a hunting ground, so the land has always have some horses. And I think some of the horses becomes wild in the area, and obviously they are also trying to tame them. As a tourist attraction, so they will have all kinds of activity for the tourists. Horse riding on this four-wheel drive, and a lot of people like to take photographs there. So there, it is a photographer's paradise. It's beautiful landscape. Come on. I want to go to the last one where I have a little video as well. Yeah. This is the tourist concert area where the tourists will be playing around this area, and then you see there will be waters, etc., and so on. There's one more video. Come on. Some more flowers, some more trees. Come on. Somehow the computer is very slow. Let's see what happened. Open up the other. Come on. Yeah, come on.
Australia.
Let me see. I can jump to the last video. Right here. Where's my last video? Okay, I will jump to the last video for you guys. Let me just find this. Is that in Chinese, English? Come on. Okay, let me just. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgotten to include the video there. Let me just see how can I play the video. Just hang on a sec. I'm going to stop the share screen for the moment, and then we'll find the video.
Okay.
And I'm going to find the video through here. and that is Saihanba. My last video. No, I didn't include the video there. Okay, so I will stop here and then welcome to any questions. You want to talk, please turn on your mic because most of you have muted your speaker. Yeah. Any question?
Albert, I've got a question about the area that is being reforested.
Hello.
Presumably it has.
Hello, everyone. Hello again.
Somebody got their phone going.
Sorry, I can't hear that clearly.
The question is,
Hi, Denise.
the area is being reforested, so presumably it used to have, as you say, a forest and adequate rainfall.
Yes,
So
it
it's
has
not-
because
not
it,
a
it is
rainfall
a it has quite a bit of snow. It snows about 8 months in a year, so there's quite a bit of water there. So there shouldn't be any problem with water.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
questions?
Any other question? Yes, please.
Binjai.
Where is the Yellow River? Mill?
The Yellow River will be flowing in the south of the Saihanba forest, a little bit south of it. So about 100 kilometers or more from the Yellow River.
So is it affected by it at all, or it's got no relation to it?
No, the Yellow River and the Saihanba forest have not much relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's more near the Inner Mongolia. Inner Mongolia is a pasture area, so it used to have a lot of grass, but not much forest. But because there is a lot of snow, so trees do grow there, and that's what they saw, and they eventually rebuilt it as a forest with trees. Yeah.
I have a question, Albert.
Yes, please.
You said it was a hunting area before.
Yes.
So I presume there were wild animals over there. And the animals come back?
I don't know. I don't know whether the wild animals come back because once it becomes so barren, the animals will have to escape somewhere or die because their habitat is being totally destroyed. But so when it's rebuilt, I don't know. During the hunting seasons, they are mostly hunting deers, rabbits. This will be their main prey.
Yeah, what we might do is so I'll start presenting in a couple of minutes.
Sorry?
Usually at the end, people love to ask questions because they're curious about our work at AWC.
Somebody should
if you have questions at the end,
Somebody's got their phone on.
I'll have questions them, and if I can't, I'll certainly ask a team member who might be able to ask them and can get back to you. All right. Well,
any other question?
It's like two. I think I'll just wait a little bit longer. Yeah, sure. It's like watching a kettle boil, isn't it? That's okay.
Who is it? Is Gregor joining?
That's the beautiful photographs in the oh gosh, I'm just concealing them. Beautiful photos.
Yeah, I would like to have more control on the speed of the display here. But anyway,
WC who go around looking at the best image they can find. So we actually had one photographer, Brad Liu, who was at Kangaroo Island, and he wanted to get the best.
I think we're in someone else's zoo.
any more question?
Yes, now that there's a bit of silence. It looked obviously as though there's a lot of monoculture.
Yep.
And very little undergrowth. So it's not being allowed to revert to a natural forest. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't think it is completely natural at the moment because, as I said, a natural forest will not be a single species forest, but it is at the moment a single species forest. And the undergrowth is mostly some of the local grasses. So I think they need to the next I don't know whether it is in their plan or not, but I think they need to diversify the forest back to its original forest state. But at the moment it is mostly a single species. I think that is one of the um, criticism from the international communities, saying the Chinese should have rebuilt the forest in a more diverse um, kind of way. But the Chinese argument is that this is the fastest way we can do it because we know this species grow here and we can grow it. So it is the area. I think let's put it that way. They are now also cutting down some of the trees for timber. So when they cut down the trees for timber, I would suggest them, if I may, is to start planting diverse trees back into the areas which they started cutting and to regenerate into a more natural environment. But at the moment, yes, that is one of the major criticism. Not only they have not much ground cover. The ground cover is also very highly single species, so that's not good. I agree with that. That is one of the major criticism of the work there.
Still, it's begun. At least they've begun.
Yeah, at least they started growing some trees back, so it's a matter of starting to diversify and as they start cutting, I suggest them to actually, if anyone listen to me, but obviously not, but I would suggest them to start replanting in more diverse species, because now the ecology is almost re-established. You see there are grass there, the land is starting to have soil built on it, the dirt is now coming back, so it is more the potential of planting other species is higher than when it was just barren. Yeah, they have a much higher opportunity to start with to increase the diversification. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
One more question, Elvis. When one of those pictures there was almost a big town. Is it right close to the forest? Is the people working in the forest living in the towns now, or still just in little villages?
They live within the village. Remember, this forest is pretty large. Okay, 92,000 hectares. It's pretty large. So they will be living in the forest. So the whole forest itself, if I remember correctly, is almost the size of a European country, one of the smaller European countries. So it's not a small area. So the people is actually living in different part of the forest, and these people living there are the forest workers. They basically either work for tourism or work for looking after the forest. And then of course there are tourists today coming into the forest, and there are accommodation for the tourists in the area as well. So they're developing in not only as a timber producing area, they are also converting it into a tourist attraction.
Well, I think we got to say thank you.
Okay,
Albert.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Before you go, Albert,
Yep.
I think it's good that we've got someone who can give us a balanced view of what's happening inside China. I'm a regular at your presentations, and over the years it builds up quite a good picture of what's going on. And it's nice to know that you can recognise propaganda and warn us about it. But on the whole, I think we would be impressed with the fight to get back to pristine water and lush greenery. Sorry that Australia doesn't have the water to do it. I mean, you can imagine what would happen in the middle of Australia if there was the water.
Well,
Energy.
for Australia, my argument will be, where energy becomes cheaper, then it is possible to rebuild some of the inland into highly dense areas. Now we know that in our middle in desert there, every now and then there will be a large rainfall, and the whole thing turn back into green. Yeah, every now and then. Obviously not every year, but a couple of years, then you will turn back. So I think the potential is here. The problem is again water. The price of energy has been decreasing. Well, obviously in our lifetime we will see the electricity bills go up, but you look at from a long-term perspective, in the say 300 years or 400 years ago, the amount of energy an individual have is limited to your energy that you can use, plus maybe a few animals. That is the amount of energy people can use. But today, the amount of energy we use is huge in comparison. For example, a simple family car is equal to several hundred horsepower. So you have to keep 100 horse in order to provide the power of your family car, right? So if the energy is a order of magnitude lower, so instead of 20 cents per kilowatt hour, it's like 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Put it that way. Then a lot of impossible things will become possible, like transporting water into the middle. Now, what we have a lot of water around us. The only thing is it is not fresh water. There's salty water. So that is the problem. Is there a way to convert our salty water into fresh water for irrigation in the middle of our desert? Yeah, Australia is pretty large, but in terms of look at for example, oil pipelines. We now have pipelines running thousands of kilometers long, transporting oil. So what if instead of oil, it is transporting water? For example, we can take up some seawater, pump it into the middle, and then use something like a solar tunnel. There was one project in which you build a very, very large greenhouse. The greenhouse itself is probably, let's say, several thousand acres in size. So you basically put up some sticks, put some panels on top of it, then it becomes a huge greenhouse. Now, this huge greenhouse will heat up the air. So you will put a big funnel in the middle. Then the air will be rising up the funnel, and that should be able to produce a power. That means by the fact that you're heating up a large area with solar energy, you produce power. That power can be used somewhere else. But again, once the suns go out, then it becomes cool. But what if we pipe in some of the seawater and then put it as ponds inside this greenhouse, this big greenhouse? Then the heat will evaporate the seawater. And the seawater, when it rises up at the top of the funnel, the chimney, then we can collect it back, because as the air rises up, it naturally will cool. When it cools, it condenses, and then we collect that's moisture from the tip of the somewhere close to the top of the chimney, and then use it to irrigate something else. and the water itself becomes a bacteria. It store water, so even at night, the temperature within that greenhouse is still high. Therefore, electricity is still generating. Then we have a solar power supply as well as fresh water generation at the same time. And again, it depends on the price of energy and the price of building this thing. So there are possibilities once energy becomes cheaper, and then we might be able to green Australia.
We're looking forward to it.
Well, but of course, this is a big project. Okay, it's something we can dream, but we need our politicians to start thinking. Hey, this is not the end of the day. We might have solutions. You have to ask the experts. Don't assume you know everything.
All right. Well, we'll wait and see what you tell us next time.
Okay, next time I will be on next term. I will be on the COVID-19. Well, basically, what I'm planning is now. If the COVID-19 didn't disappear in, say, another 2 months, then I may put it off to the 4th term. But if the COVID-19 becomes less a issue, then we can look back at what the Chinese have done in order to combat the COVID-19. So the 3 talks I'm going to give in the 3rd term, if COVID-19 is not an issue, will be the first one, the cruise ships. We know that, for example, Princess Ruby Princess here is causing quite a bit of problem. But Ruby Princess is not the first one. There are other cruise ships having a lot of COVID-19 problems. So we will look at how the Chinese handle that. That's one. Another one is how the Chinese actually built its temporary infectious hospital within 10 days for a 1,000 bed hospital, and then about 1 week later, another 1,600 beds of its hospital is in operation. How they did it. So that will be another talk. The 3rd talk I'm going to talk about is how to isolate so many patients. So what the Chinese have done in order to actually stop the spread of virus. So that is my plan for the next term. So it will be on COVID-19, but we'll be looking at how the Chinese do it their way. See, is there any lessons we can learn from that? Maybe.
Okay, we'll look forward to it.
Okay, so we will see you next term.
Can go now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See you next term.